As we start into this new year, we're just delighted to have each one of you here with us. We have begun a series in 2 Peter chapter 1 that talks about areas of Christian living, sometimes called the Christian virtues. The principle of it that we're going to be looking at today is reflected in the book of Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 1. It said, "Let brotherly love continue." Here's two little boys, whatever ages they are. Typically, I'd say they're, 3 to 5. Someone they're going to say, "Oh no, they're 3.5 or something." I don't know where they're at. But here's little kids. But think about this. One of the things as you think about these little boys, let brotherly love continue. Let's say they're 4 years old or whatever. Well, will they feel that way when they're 14 and 24 and 34? You'd hope. Let brotherly love continue. In the passage that we had talked about in 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 5 through 7, and I just kind of condensed it here, where he says, giving all diligence, really work hard on these things, rather than just say, well, I'll just see what falls out of the tree and drifts down on me. He said, to your faith, add virtue. What would you say for 2023? Make good decisions. And to your virtue, knowledge. Here's just a little side note I got from Scott Beyer, who I'd mentored 20 years ago, and now he's preaching in Kentucky, and kids are doing great and so forth. But he came across an item I found really surprising. And it said, if the study was done, if you interact with the Bible one time a week, if this is all you get, you don't shrivel up and die because of it, but you don't grow. If you react twice, let's say you come Sunday morning and you come Sunday night on Zoom, but you don't really do any of the homework, you don't study, you sit there and kind of, chill. You don't grow. If you interact with the Bible 3 times a week, let's say you did Sunday morning, Sunday night, and you did the homework, you grow a little bit. And what was surprising, said if you interact with the Bible 4 times a week, it is monumental growth. It's wow. So whether it happens, maybe you're doing an online study with somebody else or having a Bible study or whatever it is. But and think about it this way. I only need to eat 1 time a week. Is that true? Yes. Provided it's continuous. Otherwise, if you're taking an ordinary meal, 1 time a week, I'm just going to shrivel up. Well, I'm not going to, in physical food, I won't do real good with just 4, but it tends to help eating every day. And so think about God's Word, and what are your plans for you to grow in this coming year? We talked about self-control. We talked about perseverance. We talked about godliness. Here's principles of godly living. And then this morning, brotherly love. And other versions will refer to it as brotherly kindness or brotherly affection. And Peter wraps up the section and said, if these things are in you and increasing. So in all of our lives, we're looking at, here's my goal, here's what I want to do, but I can't coast. Things just coasting run out of energy and end up as a standstill. You need to be growing and improving. So what is brotherly love? I like this picture. Here's facial confirmation. Here's a little guy hanging onto his big brother. They look like they're related. You probably know that the word for brotherly love is Philadelphia. Philos for love or friendship, affection, that kind of thing. And Adelphos for brother. So it's the kind of relationship, well, maybe you didn't have a good family, you don't like your brother, man, that could be. But generally, if you're in a family and you liked each other, and you have that kind of warm family connection. And so what it amounts to is real friendship. And so if you come from a family that had some of the things together, you have that quality of life that you appreciate family members through the years. And so really it carries that idea of the natural affection you have in your family and a regard for and appreciation of family members. And then as it extends to others in genuine friendship. This is that idea of brotherly love, brotherly affection. You'd like the backstory of this picture, though. And that in Romans 12 and verse 10, where Paul tells the Romans, be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Well, here's a picture of a teenager with this little guy on his back. Well, here's the story. In this picture, 7-year-old Braden, who weighs 45 pounds at this time, lived in Michigan and was born with cerebral palsy, is carried 40 miles by his 14-year-old brother, Hunter, to raise awareness of cerebral palsy. He said, we raised money, but we weren't doing the walk in order to raise money. And here's various celebrities contributed and such as that. And they did that 40-mile walk in 2 days. And all along the route, people joined in and cheered them on, and kids held up handmade signs. And Braden wears braces and can only walk with the aid of a walker. And for years, his 14-year-old brother has been like a second pair of legs for him. And this has been reported on NBC, CBS, ABC. And so really a neat thing. So here is brotherly love. Well, when you think about it then in relationship to people outside your initial family, you have relationships and levels of friendship with just anybody in society. But we live in a world that, with whatever the right number now is, 7+ billion or whatever it is, maybe pushing 8. But there's a lot of loneliness and isolation still. People barely know their neighbors. The family unit is challenged. You have, even in the church sometimes, I've been coming for 15 years. I just don't know their names. Well, if you was in your house, you think maybe I would remember my kids' names. And so we want to do that. And you say, well, if you don't, I tell some people, just start with one person at a time. So I don't think I know you. And they say, well, I've been coming since, 1921. Whatever, it hasn't been that long here. But there's the idea in order to build those kind of bridges. In 3 John, there's only one chapter. John verse 14, he says, peace be to you. The friends greet you. Greet the friends by name. And so my point is, do you know their names? You say, not very well. Well, there's something you can do. Say, all right, this year I'm going to learn people's names because that's part in building those bridges. The reality is, I don't care on what level, if you are going to establish friendships and relationships, there is always sacrifice and risk. And it must be involved, or you never get past the lowest level. But really, it's worth the price. Whether raising kids, having a family, it's fun, it's challenging. There's always problems, and there's always solutions to those problems. And so what kind of friendships do you have with anybody around you? Well, there's some you have great friendships. Why? They've proven their reliability, their loyalty, and maybe you have not just one best friend, but you have several great friends. And man, that is so cool. And sometimes they're lifelong, and sometimes they just last for a time. You trust them. You cherish them. And so people here, and some of the newer people come and said, you've known them for 40 years. Oh, yeah, I've known Jeff Dillinger since he was 16 years old. And now he's 111. But the reality is you have those kind of bonds, and it means so much to you because you know people and you trust them, that do anything for you. You do anything for them. Then there's others that they're close friends, but they're not as tight with them as some other, but you trust them and they're reliable. And others just kind of casual that you've known, hey, how you doing? And then some are toxic. People, whoa, you get around and everything's negative, or it's all one-sided. They're givers and the takers, they're the takers. And then there's some acquaintance. You know that person? Well, they're the person who serves your coffee. I think their name is Henry or Jill or whatever. So when you think about that, think about relationships to Christians. Where do you want your relationship to be in there? Well, I'd like us to talk about how you build the kind of relationships, if we're talking about brotherly love, and he says, be devoted in it. Make that a priority. Work hard at it. Well, one of the things you're going to find is have one spirit. Do we kind of think about, is there a mutual enjoyment of things and a commonality? We're here because we worship God. We honor him. We want to grow in the things of God, and we want to encourage each other in the process. We don't necessarily like all the things. Joe Pisano and I are both sports-minded. But he does disc golf. I did disc golf with him. He threw his disc 200 yards out there, whatever. It just disappeared. Mine went about 7 feet and into the dirt. He's good at that. That's not my sport. But when we get together, man, we're talking about Bible and how's the kids and family and life, and let's have a burger or some pancakes or something. If you've got the boys, they're crawling all around. And it's just joyous to be together. You don't have to have everything in common, but you love the Lord and you love each other. In 1 Samuel chapter 18 verse 1, it came about when he had finished speaking to Saul that the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David. You know, have you had that? Sometimes I meet a person and right away I like them. I mean, it takes 5 minutes and you say, oh man, that's a cool person. And there's a number of things that are commonality or things that you appreciate. But you've also been around some people, you're around them 3 minutes and say, uh-oh, hair goes up on the back of your neck. There's something not together here, and I'm going to be polite, but there's a challenge here, and I don't know what it is. Well, with Jonathan and David, instantly he said, there's my kind of guy. And so when in building relationships, seek out those qualities that you admire. David, of course, was courageous. He was manly. He was humble. He was godly. That has God delivered me from the paw of the bear and the paw of the lion, and he will deliver me from the hand of this uncircumcised Philistine. Well, man, that's warrior talk. That's encouraging. And that's really how it hit Jonathan. And so think about, as you talk to others, it maybe your particular sport may not be the same thing, but you appreciate the other person's trustworthiness, how honest they are. They'll never lie to you. I'm thinking about an individual that worshiped with us years ago. They had lots of problems, but one of their redeeming qualities is they'd never lie. If you say, look, I'll just make up some, hey, did you steal a car last weekend? He said, no, sir. It was this weekend or whatever it is. He was just always, it wasn't that area, but he'd tell you the truth. Some people are known for their generosity, or you appreciate them for their wisdom. You can go to them and say, can I ask you, in regard to the Bible, and should I, and how does this work there? Or maybe they've got a great sense of humor. They're spiritual minded, or you appreciate their giftedness in some area, or their consistent or work ethic, or their humility, or their love. It's just amazing. And so it's just joyous to be with Christians. So what do? You build those bridges. You look for those areas of mutuality. Just this little note. Here's a frowsy boy and then one frowsy looking dog. And it said, a friend is someone who thinks you're a good egg, even though you're a little cracked. Irma Bonbeck. And so that's true for all of us. We all got our kind of nuttiness along that line. And so what about showing brotherly love? Well, point number 2 is friends really care about friends. And so here's a graphic of one soldier carrying another one on his back, and he's got his weapon and such as that. And I didn't put it here, but the little tagline was from the 40s of one brother carrying a smaller brother. He ain't heavy. He's my brother. And so here was Jonathan in 1 Samuel 18 in verse 1 in the second half. And Jonathan loved him as himself. And you had friends like that. So, oh man, he's my best bud. And through the years, you have several, if you're blessed, like that. And Paul to the church at Philippi said in chapter 2 and in verse 20, Timothy, I've got no one else that is like him, who will genuinely be concerned for your welfare. He said, man, he is the guy. And certain people work real well in one venue and good in another. Proverbs 18:24, there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. My physical family, siblings, is just me and my older brother. But he chose one track, and man, I chose absolutely the diametric opposite. And so he made his choices in life. But I tell you what, I'm way closer to my brothers in Christ than I was to my physical brother, willing to care for him, but not a personal closeness. Leviticus 19, verse 18 said, do not bear a grudge against one another. Love your neighbor as yourself. Yeah, I do, but man, that Nolan guy, I remember back in 1944. He wasn't around in 44. But anyway, that kind of thing, if people, you get irritated by something. Say, well, things should have a statute of limitations. Maybe time to get over it. And yeah, but my parents, when I was growing up, well, you're 40 years old. Maybe it's time to quit blaming your parents for where you are now. Love your neighbor as yourself. Matthew 22:39, the second greatest command. Guess what it is? Love your neighbor as yourself. So am I treating them the way I would want to be treated? And likewise in James chapter 2, verse 8 and 9, if you do this, you're fulfilling the royal law. Guess what it is? Love your neighbor as yourself. And so thinking about that, really caring for others. It's not just, hey, hi, my name's Henry, I'm out of here. Then that's why we like staying around. And how are you doing? And can I help? And what's going on for you? Building those bridges to brotherly love. Here's one that said, a friend is someone who knows your song, the song in your heart, and can sing it back to you when you've forgotten the words. That happens in life sometimes. You get out, I got goals and I can conquer the world and it's all going to work this way, and life ends up being a semi and a train wreck. And somebody else is able to encourage you. Say, here's a better point of view and here's how you're going to get through that. And it means something to you because they care about you. Your friends really spend time together. In 1 Samuel chapter 8 and verse 2, and Saul took him that day and did not let him return to his father's house. Hey, young man, I tell you what, you're a giant killer. I want you right here in the palace. You are one to be appreciated. In 1 Samuel 19, verse 1, and Jonathan delighted greatly in David, and he protected him. And so you have that relationship. Building friendship isn't just, great, I waved to you at church, be blessed. It really requires time, just like raising kids. There's nothing to raising kids. They raise themselves, right? Yeah, but if that's how you leave it, man, they're going to raise themselves crazy. That's why they have responsible parents that really care about them. It takes a ton of time, but it's worth it. And so you nurture human relationships. Well, what do you do? Well, there's projects you can work together. You can help others. Galatians 6 and verse 10. That do good unto all men, especially those of the household of faith. And you have great conversations. And it might be for me, it'll be about goals or battles or joys or jobs or Bible or being honest. And you have those great conversations. But the reality is, it takes time. And it's more than, I was at church Sunday morning and boom, gone. It takes time to raise a family. It takes time to invest in people. So how do you do it? Well, invite them out for coffee, have dinner, encourage them, compliment them, have some fun. Life doesn't need to be just all work and worry. Let's enjoy the Lord, have a good time, encourage each other. Friends spend time together. And so I like this picture. There's a dog. Man, that's my kind of dog. I got 5 tennis balls. He got them all in his mouth at one time. That's me. Let's have some fun. And that's what we're looking to do this year and what we'd like to do once a month. Whoever would like to join in, we'll just send out a notification. Hey, here's a fun thing. If 5 people or 15 people want to get involved, let's have some fun together. Take steps to honor people. In 1 Samuel 18 and verse 4, Jonathan gave to David his royal robe, his armor, his sword, and his bow. Wow, here's a warrior's weapons. He said, David, I want you to have them. And so you think about things that are precious to you, and you're giving them to your best friend, because the friendship means even more. So you think about, how do you do that with people? You think about what's a blessing to them. And so for their situation, each person will be different. Maybe it'll be service. Maybe it'll be gifts. Maybe encouraging words. I'm thinking about a person from years ago. Encouraging words meant nothing to them. And it was all about service. You could, hey man, I really appreciate you. To them was just, nah, 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 nah. And what they want to know is, do you live it? Are you willing to do something about that? Maybe it's quality time. And sometimes people, well, I think they'd like this. It's hard to know what a person will like. In 1 Corinthians chapter 2 and verse 11 said, there's none among men who knows the things of a man except the spirit of a man that's within him. How do you know that? Well, they tell you what it is they like. And I tell you what, if you're going to get me a Christmas present, don't get me a knitting set. I'm not going to knit. Certain things I'm just not interested in doing. And so as you get to know a person, sometimes, well, I did this for them and they didn't like it. Well, did you ask them if they wanted it? Well, no, but I liked it. They may or may not like the same kind of thing. And one person said, you'd die for them, but would you run an errand for them? Well, he would if he said, that person is near and dear to my heart. Matthew 20 and down verse 26. He who would be great among you must first be your servant. We're just willing to serve. What can I do to help? What can they do to bless the next person? A Chinese philosopher back in nearly 400 BC, Ming Zi, said, friendship is one heart beating in two bodies. I thought, that's neat. And so as we think about friends looking out for each other. So 1 Samuel 19:2, Jonathan told David, saying, Saul, my father, is seeking to put you to death. Now, therefore, please be on guard in the morning and stay in a secret place and hide yourself. I love my dad and I love you, but I want my dad to kill you, so I'm going to protect you. And so you do that. You look out for others' interests. You call them, you send them a card, you visit them, you lend a hand. And sometimes some people are real free with advice when the other person didn't ask for advice. So think about that, Colossians 4 and verse 6. Let your speech be always with grace. And if you need to talk with them, you also have to weigh not to break confidences. And so you're trying to do what's good for them and what's good for people around you. Proverbs 27 and verse 6. Faithful are the wounds of a friend. That is, truth may sting, right? But deceitful are the kisses of an enemy. Yeah, that person never says anything bad, to your face. And so, because they're trying to set you up. A real friend will tell you the facts, but it might not be comfortable. Proverbs 27:10, do not forsake your friend or your father's friend. You build those friendships and you look out for one another. And so I like this idea of looking out. Here's a lovely golden retriever. Just lays a little muzzle across the baby, say, all's good in the world. And so Lee Iacocca said, my father always used to say that when you die, if you have 5 real friends, then you've had a great life. I thought, oh man, I got more than 5 great friends, because the Christians here, Christians in other places are great, great friends. You can trust them with anything. And just a couple other, and we'll wrap up. Friends really express their friendship. In 1 Samuel 20 and verse 4, David bowed 3 times and they wept together. But David wept more. Thanks. We're coming down to the end. We'll be able to be close. Saul was just going berserk, and Saul and Jonathan and his brothers would die in battle in a little time. So what do you do? How does that apply to you? Well, tell Christians how they've helped you and what that means to you. Tell them you really appreciate their friendship, genuine, and look them in the eye. You're not just trying to flatter. Tell them their good qualities and why you admire them, because it really is inspiration to you. Our society is one, and pretty much in the Western world, and very much so in the Asian world, man, you just don't show emotion. But that wasn't so in biblical times. In Acts 20:37, when Paul thought he'd see them no more, they wept together, and Paul kissed them. And so tell people how much they matter. A phrase I like, I tell Jim, I quote him repeatedly, that he'll say something real encouraging, and I tell him thank you. He said, Roses to the living, brother. Roses to the living. That if you're going to give compliments, you're going to give flowers, verbal, hey, I appreciate you. Give them while the person's alive rather than just lay them on the casket and say, well, Rob, here's your flowers. I wish I'd said something in the meantime. That you're appreciating a person's confidence, their constancy, their godliness. Tell them those kind of things. And then friends expressing their friendship. I chose this one of a boy kissing his dog. I had lots of ones of the dog kissing the owner. I thought some people go say, man, that is creepy. I don't want to. I've seen one person was kissing some, wasn't an armadillo, but some furry thing. I thought, man, I do not want anything like that close to my lips. A writer, their pen name was George Eliot, said, friendship is the comfort of feeling safe with a person, having neither to weigh thoughts nor measure words. You just know you're safe in their hands. And then lastly, friends encourage one another. In 1 Samuel 23:16, Jonathan arose and went to David and helped him find strength, encouraged him in the Lord. You're going to be all right. You're going to be king, and I'll be next to you. You're going to be safe from my father. God's going to watch over you. You're a mighty warrior. And our words should build others up. You know, some people just get on a negative roll. What you want to do is say, what's going to help that person? And what's going to be good to encourage them to take the next good step? You could see, they're hesitating, but they could go there. They could make that next step spiritually. They could be baptized. They could move into leadership. They could be more encouraging to people around them. They could be involved in teaching. They could be involved in mentoring. Or is there something you see that'd be great in doing? And remind them of the progress they're made, because a lot of times the people themselves are, yeah, but I failed here and I didn't do this very well. So, yeah, but look at the progress you have achieved already. Help them focus on their goals. Yeah, but look at the obstacle. There's an interesting principle. In riding motorcycles, years ago, I had a motorcycle safety class, and they had a piece of trash, a part of a bumper laying in or something in the road, and you're doing this obstacle course, and you've got to miss the thing. You know, there's a secret to it. The secret is, and I'm serious about this, do not look at the thing. If you're driving, say, man, I hope I don't hit it. Your wheel you're navigating right to the thing you don't want to hit. Well, where do you look? You look where you want to go, not where you don't want to go. I did iron work as a young man. I walked the steel 200 feet up in the air. Some of it's 12 inches wide. Some of it's 2.5 inches wide. The same principle works. You do not look down where you don't want to go. Where do you look? You'll look at the other end of the beam where you want to be, and you go there. So think about as 2023, when you look to achieve your goals, don't be worrying about the obstacle. Look at the focus on Jesus Christ and run your race. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 9 and 10. And about brotherly love, see that you excel still more. Just keep on keeping on. And so Ecclesiastes 4:9 says, 2 are better than one, for if one falls down, his friend can help him up. I like this picture. The dog and his owners high five and say, we're going to make it, and it's going to be all right. So what we've looked at this morning is how you build that kind of brotherly relationship, that mutual enjoyment and commonality in one spirit. You really care about the other person. You're willing to spend time with them. You take steps to honor. You look out for one another. You express your friendship and appreciation, and you encourage one another in Jesus Christ. What do you got to say, Paul? Happy New Year 2023. If you're here this morning, you'd like to respond in any way, and we can encourage you, you'd like our prayers, you want to be baptized, like to have a Bible study, we'll help you any way we can. Be blessed in 2023. Let's be standing. We're going to be singing song number 369.
Though Jesus